Hi and welcome back to another Saturday Psalm. My name is Adam Denley and this is Psalm 19. Well, let's get straight into it. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they display knowledge. There is no speech or language where their voice is not heard. Their voice goes out into all the earth. Their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens he has pitched a tent for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming forth from his pavilion, like a champion rejoicing to run its course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is hidden from its heat. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are sure and altogether righteous. They're more precious than gold, than much pure gold. They're sweeter than honey from the comb. By them is your servant warned. In keeping them there is great reward. Who can discern his errors? Forgive my hidden faults. Keep your servant also from willful sins. May they not rule over me, then will I be blameless, innocent of great transgression. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Well, scientists estimate that there are at least 100 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy. And there are at least another 100 billion galaxies like our own galaxy that we live in. Can you just imagine that massive number? I can't comprehend it. It's too big to understand. But when I look up at a clear night sky, I see two big things. One, just how puny I am on this planet compared to all that's up there, and secondly, I see something of the sheer wonder and volume of God's creative power. So this psalm tells us that the creation has a creator, and that the creation is not quiet about that. Verse 1 tells us that the heavens declare the glory of God. That is, the heavens speak to us. All we need to do is look out the window, look up at the night sky and the stars to see that the sky and the stars speak about their creator. Well, why did God create so many stars and planets and suns and galaxies? Well, verse 1 tells us, for the glory of God. God's creation, verse 2, day and night, day by day, night after night, echoes. All of this is made by God. All we have to do is look out there to be reminded that the creation has a creator. I remember when I first became a Christian, I remember lying out at the night sky, looking up at the creation. And I was reduced to sheer wordless wonder at the stars above my head as they came into focus. I wonder, when was the last time you were blown away to sheer wordless wonder at the creation? Maybe seeing a newborn baby, or a wonderful scenery, or maybe a sunset. In the pagan world, in the ancient Near East, the sun and the moon and the stars were thought of as divine beings that exercised power over their own realms and over humans. But that's not the same kind of thinking that we get here in Psalm 19. It treads on this line of thinking, actually. For the sun isn't a god. Why? Well, because it's just another work of God's handiwork. God created the sun. In verse 4, we're told that it was God who put the sun into his place. Literally, God pitched a tent for the sun. He marked out, verse 5, the course that the sun would take. The psalmist moves from the boundaries set out for the sun to the boundaries set out for God's people in the Torah, or God's law. Paul says in Galatians chapter 2 verse 16 that we know that a person is not justified, that is, a person's not made right by observing the law, but by having faith in Jesus Christ. So what the Apostle Paul is saying is this: we don't have to keep God's law to work our way into God's good books. No, not at all. So God, in the person of Jesus, has come down to rescue us. That is, Jesus died on the cross in our place for our sin to make us right with God again. He's rescued us from hell through the cross for heaven ahead. There's great news found in the Bible. And so now that we've been justified, now that we've been made right with God by faith in Jesus, now that's happened, we can rejoice in God's law. For God's law marks out the boundaries by which we can live by. God's law warns us and guides us and sets the perimeters to show how a sinful people like you and like me can live in the presence of a holy God. Not to earn God's favour do we keep God's law. No, as a result of what God's done for us, we're going to want to keep his law, to please him in response to his favour. And so, like the psalmist, we can say with this section from verses 10 down to 11 that the law of the Lord is perfect. It revives the soul. We can say also that God's law makes simple people like me wise, that it gives joy to the heart and light to our eyes. God's law affects our whole being. The law of the Lord is indeed much more precious than gold, than much pure gold. It's sweeter than honey from the comb. Verse 12 asks this question: who can discern his errors? And verse 11 tells us. It says it right there, doesn't it? Answer: those who are willing to listen to the warning of God's word, and those who obey it. Well, Jesus had a half-brother called James, and James wrote in his epistle, in James chapter 1 verse 23, he said this: anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like a man who looks at his face in the mirror and after looking at himself goes away and forgets what he looks like. But the man who looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues to do this, not forgetting what he's heard, but continues on doing it, he will be blessed in what he does. We live in a beautiful world that's been created by God. We're not to block out God's voice that's speaking every day to us from his creation. We're to listen to it. We're to let God's perfect law breathe life into our souls. We're to enjoy the boundaries that are set out for us in God's law so that we can live our life now to please God. Well, let's end this psalm by saying that last verse together, verse 14. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Thanks so much for joining us again for this Saturday Psalm. I look forward to spending some more time with you in the next one.